I have to admit, the more I look at what's coming in Days of Our Lives on Friday, April 17th, the more it feels like several characters are standing right on the edge of emotional disaster without fully realizing it. To me, one of the most interesting dynamics is Xander Kyriakis turning to Gwen Rizsek as a way to avoid dealing with what he is really feeling. Xander can clearly see that Sarah Horton and Brady Black are becoming closer, and instead of confronting that jealousy head-on, it seems like he is trying to bury it in a temporary distraction. On the surface, he and Gwen may appear to be enjoying a playful, carefree connection, but I cannot help wondering if Gwen is truly as comfortable with this arrangement as she claims to be. Right now, Gwen insists she is fine keeping things casual, but in Salem, those kinds of promises rarely stay simple for long. I think it would not be surprising if deeper feelings start creeping in, especially if Gwen begins wanting more from Xander than he is prepared to give. At the same time, Theo Carver is about to bring Marlena Evans a revelation that could change everything. When Theo confides that Lexie Carver is alive and may soon regain consciousness, that is the kind of news that completely shifts the emotional atmosphere. Marlena has seen countless shocking moments in her life, but even for her, this feels like the kind of twist no one could have fully prepared for. Meanwhile, Paulina Price appears to be unraveling under the pressure surrounding EJ DiMera. She may try to frame her frustration as irritation over EJ's endless chaos, but Belle Black could sense there is something deeper going on. Belle is usually sharp when it comes to reading people, and I think she may quickly realize Paulina is holding back part of the truth. Sometimes what is left unsaid says more than the words themselves, and this feels like one of those moments. Then there is EJ himself, who once again finds himself in dangerous territory during a confrontation with Kristen DiMera. Whenever Kristen starts speaking in veiled threats, it usually means something darker is brewing beneath the surface. With Kristen reportedly aligning herself with Sophia Choi in a plot against Johnny DiMera, this confrontation could carry consequences far beyond a simple family argument. EJ may walk away from that encounter realizing he is facing a threat he can no longer control. And then there is Alex Kyriakis, who seems ready to make a grand gesture for Stephanie Kyriakis. I think Alex genuinely wants to prove he can be the partner Stephanie needs, but sometimes desperation can make even sincere efforts feel overwhelming. Instead of bringing them closer, his plan may end up pushing Stephanie further away. From Stephanie's perspective, Alex's behavior could come across as trying too hard, especially after he witnessed her close moment with Jeremy Horton. Rather than feeling romantic, his surprise might feel more like insecurity disguised as devotion. That is often when good intentions create the worst misunderstandings. By the end of the episode, Alex and Stephanie could find themselves in yet another painful argument, and I cannot help feeling that each new conflict is exposing cracks in their marriage that are becoming harder to ignore. Friday's episode seems less about dramatic explosions and more about emotional pressure quietly building behind closed doors. And in Salem, those quiet moments often lead to the biggest fallout. I have to say, when this storyline started unfolding, I assumed Kristen DiMera was simply looking for another way to punish EJ. But after the April 16th episode, it feels much darker than that. To me, the real shock was not just that Kristen is angry. It is how far she seems willing to go to make that anger mean something. Days of Our Lives spoilers seem to suggest that Kristen DiMera has decided the best way to make EJ DiMera suffer is through Johnny DiMera. And honestly, I did not expect even Kristen to say it so plainly. When she revealed to Sophia Choi that she wanted Johnny dead, even Sophia appeared stunned for a moment, which says a lot considering Sophia has already shown she can be dangerous in her own right. What stood out to me was Sophia's hesitation. For a brief second, it seemed like she understood that revenge and murder are two very different things. But Kristen knows exactly how to manipulate people when they are emotionally vulnerable. She pushed Sophia toward that darker instinct, reminding her that if she follows instructions, they could both get what they want and walk away without consequences. And that is where things may become even more complicated. Sophia is not just thinking about helping Kristen anymore. She also wants her own revenge, particularly against Holly Jonas. That means this partnership is no longer about one target. It is becoming a dangerous chain reaction, where personal vendettas could spiral into something no one can control. But the person I am most worried about is Chanel Dupree DeMera. Sometimes soap operas give subtle warnings before tragedy hits, and Chanel's recent fears feel exactly like that kind of warning. She keeps noticing how anxious Johnny has become about her pregnancy and the baby, and she worries that his constant fear might somehow bring disaster closer. In soaps, when characters start talking about dread like that, it usually means the writers are planting emotional groundwork for something painful. I cannot help wondering if Kristen's plan to eliminate Johnny could go horribly wrong, with Chanel becoming the unintended victim instead. If Sophia helps carry out Kristen's scheme and something goes sideways, Chanel could be caught in the middle. And because she is pregnant, the stakes become far more devastating. It would not just threaten Chanel's life, it could put the baby in danger too. That kind of twist would completely shatter Johnny, especially because all this time he has been worried about losing his family without realizing the threat could be coming from inside his own circle. The irony here is what makes the story especially tragic to me. Johnny keeps fearing that something bad will happen, but he has no idea that Kristen and Sophia may be the ones quietly setting that nightmare into motion behind the scenes. And if there is one thing soaps do well, it is this. The plan almost never hurts the intended target. Instead, the fallout usually lands on the person nobody expected. That is why I think Kristen and Sophia's alliance is heading toward disaster. Not just for Johnny, but for everyone connected to him. Whether their plan succeeds or completely unravels, it feels almost certain that someone innocent could end up paying the price. I think this episode tried to do two very different things at once. Give us some genuinely warm family moments, and then quietly slip in a few emotional landmines that could explode later. Johnny finds Chanel folding laundry and gently tries to get her to rest, but Chanel clearly is not slowing down just because she is in her second trimester. Instead of bed, she is suddenly full of energy, and for a moment it feels like the kind of simple domestic happiness this show does not always let these characters have. The little family trip for gelato with Trey almost felt like the writers were letting them breathe for once. Then Dimitri appears in the square, spots Leo, and immediately bolts before he can be seen. That alone says everything about where his head is right now. He is still running, even when nobody is technically chasing him. Meanwhile, Johnny, Chanel, and EJ all end up sharing a surprisingly peaceful moment together. EJ promises he will not let them down again. Johnny promises to learn from his own mistakes, and Chanel gives them both that look that basically says, I have heard promises before. When she tells them she is going to hold them to their words, it felt like the most grounded line in the whole scene because Chanel has become the one person refusing to just accept apologies without action. Over at the DiMera mansion, the tone shifts fast. Dimitri sneaks in like he owns the place, pours himself a drink, and walks straight into Gwen holding divorce papers. At first, Gwen is still caught up in her own bitterness over Leo, until she reveals the twist neither of them seemed ready for. Leo dumped her. That changes the entire mood because suddenly Gwen realizes she has to push this divorce through before Dimitri changes his mind. And sure enough, he already has. Dimitri admits he may not want the divorce anymore, and for a second it almost feels like Gwen might hesitate. Instead, she does what Gwen does best. She weaponizes annoyance. She threatens to stay married, live with him, follow him everywhere, and complain about him endlessly online until he cannot stand another second of it. Honestly, it was ridiculous, but in a very Gwen kind of way. What surprised me was Dimitri's reaction. He does not yell, he does not fight. He quietly tells Gwen she is not even worth getting angry over. That lands harder than shouting ever could. You can actually see Gwen crack a little in that moment. For once, the sarcasm drops, and she remembers the man she thought she fell in love with. When she asks him to find even a little compassion for both of them, it feels like the first honest thing she has said in a while. Somehow, that finally gets through. Dimitri signs the papers, but the look on his face makes it obvious this story is nowhere near over. His promise to make her pay later felt less like a threat and more like a warning. Then the episode moves into trivia night, and honestly, the tension there was almost worse than anything happening at the mansion. Jada and Theo arrive already carrying emotional baggage into the room, and things only get more uncomfortable when Gabby and Philip show up. Jada has to explain why Sean is moving in with her, and Theo's silence says more than any dialogue could. He barely says anything, but the way he just stares at the table makes it painfully obvious he is seeing a version of their relationship that Jada may not be ready to admit herself. Then Leo walks in and somehow becomes the least awkward person in the room, which is saying something. Gabby pulls him aside and gets the full update. He is officially done with Dimitri, completely single, and still only in love with Javi. I was actually surprised by Gabby's reaction, because instead of mocking him, she almost seems impressed by his honesty. That tiny moment felt more meaningful than it probably should have. At the bar, Jada quietly admits this could be her last date with Theo, though she still cannot bring herself to say what everyone else can already see. Sean moving in may be changing things, whether she wants it to or not. Then Gabby mentions Theo quitting his job, and Jada's shock says she may know even less about Theo than she thought. Back at the table, things only spiral further. Philip brings up business. Leo asks exactly the wrong questions, and Theo looks ready to snap. By the time trivia night officially starts, the whole thing turns bizarre, with people yelling answers instead of writing them down like normal human beings. The chaos almost felt intentional, like the writers wanted the absurdity of the game to mirror how emotionally messy everyone at that table really was. Eventually, Leo leaves, and Theo follows, which may end up mattering more than the episode lets on. Outside, Leo calls Marlena to thank her, completely unaware that Javi is sitting nearby and overhearing everything before slipping away. That felt like one of those classic soap moments where a quiet scene could suddenly become tomorrow's emotional explosion. At the same time, Gabby tries reaching Theo, but he shuts her down because he wants to be alone, while Jada ends up drifting toward Philip and Gabby instead. Little shifts like that can sometimes say more than the big dramatic scenes. Back home, the episode closes with Johnny and Chanel. After talking about the evening and about EJ, they start reconnecting in a way that feels intimate, without needing to say much. For a second, it looks like the episode is ending on warmth. Then Johnny touches Chanel and suddenly stops. I think I might have just felt a lump. And just like that, the entire mood changes. To me, that final moment felt like the writers reminding us that on this show, peace never lasts for long. Just when Johnny and Chanel seemed like they were finally finding stable ground, the story introduces another frightening possibility hanging over them. And because it came in such a quiet moment, it hit harder than a louder cliffhanger might have. I think Friday's Days of Our Lives is shaping up to be one of those episodes where every secret in Salem feels like it is hanging by a thread. And Theo may be the first one to make everything even messier. Theo is carrying around the kind of secret that could completely change his family forever. He knows Lexie is alive. Just saying that still feels surreal to me, because in Salem, death never really seems to mean what it should. Theo has already walked away from his job at Demera because of what he knows, but the part that really stands out to me is that he still cannot bring himself to tell Abe the truth. And honestly, I can understand why. How do you tell your father that the woman he lost is suddenly back? How do you say those words out loud without changing everything? Theo clearly feels trapped between protecting his family and protecting the secret itself. But the burden is starting to become too much, and he decides he needs someone to confide in. That leads him straight to Marlena. Theo seems to believe Marlena can keep his confidence because, in his mind, doctor-patient privilege should protect whatever he says. The problem is, Marlena is not actually his doctor. And in Salem, technicalities like that have a way of becoming very dangerous. I was wondering if Theo is about to make the mistake that sets this entire storyline into motion, because once Marlena knows something, it rarely stays buried for long. Meanwhile, Stephanie is still trying to recover after everything she has been through. Her kidnapping trauma has clearly left deeper scars than she wants to admit, and Alex is desperate to help her, even if he has no idea how. To me, Alex's intentions seem genuine, but sometimes good intentions in Salem create even bigger problems. Stephanie has already pushed back against every suggestion he has made, which leaves Alex trying one last time with a special surprise meant to lift her spirits. Of course, because this is Days, the surprise does not go the way he hopes. Maybe I am wrong, but this feels like one of those moments where Alex may finally realize that love cannot fix trauma, no matter how badly he wants it to. Then there is Kristen, who is operating exactly the way Kristen usually does, with anger, blame, and just enough menace to make everyone around her nervous. Rachel's latest stay at Bayview has pushed Kristen over the edge, and in her mind there is only one person responsible, EJ. Kristen sees it like a chain reaction. Rachel never would have tried to shoot EJ if he had not become the center of so much chaos. And now Rachel is paying the price for it. Logic may not completely support Kristen's version of events, but when has that ever stopped her? Kristen is not just furious, she wants EJ to understand that she is furious. And when Kristen DeMero wants someone to pay, that usually means trouble is right around the corner. At the same time, Salem's political world is becoming just as tense. Paulina may be the mayor, but she seems to believe that Belle being district attorney means Belle should simply make Paulina's problems disappear. And right now, Paulina has one question that she cannot let go of. Why is EJ still walking around free? I get the feeling Paulina is losing patience, and Belle may soon find herself caught between doing her job and surviving Paulina's wrath. In Salem, that can sometimes be two very different things. And then, almost unexpectedly, there is a quieter emotional story unfolding with Xander and Gwen. Xander is heartbroken because Sarah has moved on with Brady. Gwen is facing her own disappointment because Dimitri has apparently changed his mind about ending their marriage, along with giving her the kind of financial farewell she probably expected. Both of them are hurting. Both of them feel abandoned. And somehow, when they are together, they pretend everything is fine. That part actually feels very classic soap to me, because sometimes the most believable relationships begin with two people trying to hide how broken they really are. What starts as shared misery can slowly turn into something neither of them planned. And in Salem, pretending to be happy has a funny way of becoming real when nobody is paying attention. I think the week of April 20th on Days of Our Lives could quietly set up several storylines that become much bigger than they first appear. One of the first things that stood out to me is Sean Brady moving in with Jada Hunter while he continues recovering from his gunshot wound. Sean clearly has a long road ahead after surgery, and he needs someone around to help him through it. What makes this more interesting is that he was uncomfortable letting Belle take care of him, but he had no problem accepting Jada's offer. Jada framed it as two partners looking out for each other, which makes sense because they work together and already share trust. But I can't help wondering if this arrangement could reopen something emotional between them. Sean and Jada already crossed that line once before, and soap operas rarely put two former lovers under the same roof without a reason. Even if both of them insist it is only friendship, that kind of close proximity usually changes things. Then there is Marlena Evans, who suddenly finds herself carrying a secret that feels much heavier than usual. After learning from Theo Carver that Lexie is alive, Marlena is now trapped in a difficult position because she learned this information during therapy, which means she is professionally obligated to keep it confidential. Under normal circumstances, Marlena could probably handle that burden. But lately, she has seemed more uncertain about her own judgment, especially in everything involving Rachel. To me, that makes this storyline more compelling, because Marlena is not just keeping a secret, she may start questioning whether staying silent is the right thing. And if she comes face to face with Abe, The emotional weight of knowing something that huge could become impossible for her to hide. Meanwhile, Xander seems to be doing what Xander often does when he is hurting, distracting himself. He has been spending time with Gwen, but honestly, it feels more like an emotional bandage than a real connection. It looks like he is trying to avoid dealing with what he still feels for Sarah. The problem is, Sarah appears to be drifting closer to Brady, and that could create a completely different kind of mess if Xander realizes he waited too long. Sometimes on this show, the most dangerous storylines are not the explosive ones. They are the slow emotional shifts that happen while characters think nothing is changing. I also think Leo and Javi may be heading into one of those difficult relationship phases where love may not be enough. Leo wants to explain himself, but repairing trust is usually harder than simply apologizing. And with Leo's history, Javi may not be ready to believe that things can really be different this time. The biggest production moment of the week, though, is the arrival of the new Chad DiMera, played by Connor Floyd, who officially makes his debut on April 21st. Any recast of a long-running character is a huge adjustment for viewers, because fans are not just meeting a new actor, they are being asked to emotionally reconnect with a familiar character through a different face. Sometimes that works immediately, and sometimes it takes time. I think a lot will depend on how quickly the show gives this new version of Chad a meaningful story, instead of simply relying on the recast itself to create excitement. And then there is Joy Wesley's return, which could create serious complications for Alex and Stephanie. Multiple reports suggest Joy's comeback may come with a major personal revelation. The obvious question is whether she is returning with Alex's baby, because if that happens, it could completely disrupt the fragile balance Alex and Stephanie have been trying to rebuild. Soap couples rarely get peace for long, and this feels like the kind of twist designed to test whether their relationship can survive real consequences. For me, the most interesting part of this week is that so many of these stories revolve around secrets, hidden feelings, hidden truths, and hidden consequences. And on a show like Days of Our Lives, secrets usually stay buried only until the exact worst possible moment. I honestly didn't expect a simple compliment to turn into this kind of unexpectedly charming public exchange, but somehow Ryan Gosling and Deidre Hall have managed to create one of those rare celebrity moments that feels both surreal and strangely sincere. What began as Gosling calling Hall his OG acting inspiration could have easily ended there as a sweet passing remark. But instead of fading away like most celebrity shout-outs do, the whole thing seems to keep growing. First there was admiration, then an invitation, and now there are flowers, not just a polite bouquet, but an entire wall of them. To me, that is what makes this feel so unusual. It was not just thoughtful, it felt cinematic. Hall shared the moment on Instagram with a caption that perfectly captured the tone of the whole exchange. She wrote, "Ryan, just when I thought I couldn't feel more adored, your wall of flowers arrived. Unnecessary, but greatly appreciated." And from the photo, it really did look less like a gift and more like a statement. Bright flowers filling the space around her in a way that was impossible to ignore. What made the moment even better, I think, was how quickly her Days of Our Lives co-stars turned it into its own little event. Robert Scott Wilson joked, "That Gosling, what a guy." Hall immediately answered with, "Take a lesson." And Wilson, clearly understanding the assignment, replied, "Tough competition, but I love a challenge." That playful back and forth gave the whole thing an even warmer feel, like everyone around her understood just how unexpectedly delightful this had become. Then Greg Rickhart added, "So lovely. I've left for the day, but can someone please see if any flowers have been left in my room?" That may have been my favorite reaction, because it acknowledged exactly what everyone was probably thinking. Once Ryan Gosling starts sending flower walls, everyone else suddenly has a very hard act to follow. Hank Northrup summed it up with, "Gosling puts the G in gentleman." And Emily O'Brien noticed what many people were already starting to see. "Such a gentleman. I sense a new friendship blooming." Even Paul Telfer kept it simple. "How lovely." What stands out to me is that fans seem just as invested as the cast. The reactions were not cynical or exaggerated. They felt genuinely amused by how wholesome the whole thing was becoming. Some called it gorgeous. Others simply could not get over the fact that Deidre Hall was receiving flowers from Ryan Gosling at all. And maybe that is why this has resonated. It did not feel staged. It did not feel promotional. It just felt unexpectedly sweet. Gosling could have left it at one compliment and moved on. Instead, he followed through. And Hall could have simply said thank you and let the moment pass. Instead, she answered in a way that kept the connection going. That is what makes this feel less like a random celebrity interaction and more like the beginning of one of those unlikely Hollywood friendships nobody saw coming, but now everyone wants to watch unfold. I think Thursday's Days of Our Lives episode is shaping up to be one of those chapters where emotion quietly takes over before anyone in Salem even realizes how much has changed. The first moment that really stands out to me is the situation between Leo Stark and Javi Hernandez. After running into each other in the town square, Leo finally seems ready to say what he probably should have said a long time ago. He admits that ending things with Dimitri made him see something clearly, that he never fully let himself commit to Javi when he had the chance. To me, that feels like genuine growth for Leo, because he usually hides behind sarcasm or chaos instead of honesty. This time, he appears to be laying everything out without his usual performance. Javi may actually notice that too. He could see that Leo has changed, at least a little, and for a moment it may seem like there is still a possibility for them. But I was wondering if Salem was really going to make it that easy, because it rarely does. Instead of welcoming Leo back, Javi reportedly shuts him down. And if rumors about Javi's new romantic interest are true, Leo may have arrived just a little too late. Sometimes in Salem, timing can be worse than betrayal. Meanwhile, Xander Kyriakis appears to be drifting deeper into dangerous territory again. His meeting with Kate Roberts Brady sounds like the kind of conversation that never leads anywhere innocent. Whenever those two start discussing strategy, it usually means someone else ends up paying the price. At the same time, Xander faces something much more personal. He sees Sarah Horton growing closer to Brady Black, and I think that moment could hit him harder than he wants to admit. Watching someone you still love begin to emotionally move on can be brutal, even for someone as guarded as Xander. Then there is Johnny and Chanel, and honestly, this may become the most emotionally heavy part of the episode. What begins as an intimate moment suddenly changes when Johnny believes he feels a lump on Chanel's breast. That instantly shifts everything from romance to fear. Johnny's concern seems immediate, but Chanel's reaction may not be what he expects. Instead of panic, spoilers suggest Chanel becomes frustrated. And to me, that actually makes sense. From Chanel's perspective, Johnny may once again seem like he is jumping straight to the worst possible conclusion. She may believe he is letting fear control him, and she could insist he is overreacting before any real evidence exists. She may even try to convince herself that he simply made a mistake. But in true soap fashion, the more someone dismisses a warning, the more likely it becomes that the warning matters. If Johnny really did feel something, this storyline could suddenly become far more serious than Chanel wants to believe. Over on the DiMera side of Salem, Kristen is once again doing what Kristen does best, turning pain into revenge. Her alliance with Sophia Choi appears to be moving into a more dangerous phase, and I have to say, that combination feels especially volatile. Sophia wants revenge of her own, particularly where Holly Jonas is concerned, while Kristen wants to make EJ suffer by going after Johnny. That alone feels like a disaster waiting to happen. Sophia may need Kristen's resources, but Kristen rarely helps anyone without her own agenda attached. When two people in Salem start bonding over revenge, it usually ends with collateral damage everywhere. And this partnership feels like exactly that kind of storm. By the end of the episode, it seems several lives could be shifting at once. Leo may lose Javi for good, Xander may realize Sarah is slipping further away, Johnny may uncover a frightening possibility about Chanel, and Kristen may set a dangerous plan into motion that could hurt far more people than intended. I may be wrong, but Thursday's episode feels less like a calm setup and more like the beginning of multiple emotional explosions that Salem won't be able to contain for long. Looking at Thursday's episode of Days of Our Lives, I think the real tension is not just in what everyone is doing, but in why they are doing it now. The first thing that stands out to me is Kristen DiMera bringing Sophia Choi deeper into her latest scheme. What makes this interesting is that Kristen could have easily turned against Sophia after she involved Rachel Black in the drama surrounding Holly Jonas. Instead, she appears to be pulling Sophia closer. To me, that raises an obvious question. Is Kristen truly treating Sophia like a partner, or is she simply keeping her close until the moment she becomes disposable? With Kristen, loyalty has always come with conditions, and I would not be surprised if this alliance is far more dangerous than it looks. Then there is the unexpected pairing of Brady Black and Sarah Horton spending time together. On the surface, it may seem innocent, but in Salem, even a quiet moment between two people can quickly become complicated. I was wondering whether this is simply emotional support between two people carrying a lot of history, or whether the show may be hinting at something more that could create new problems down the road. At the same time, Javi Hernandez is demanding honesty from Leo Stark, and honestly, I can understand why. Leo chose Javi over Dimitri von Leuschner, but that does not automatically erase everything that happened before. Javi seems determined to find out exactly how far things went between Leo and Dimitri before Leo decided where his heart really was. From what it seems, the connection may have been limited to flirting and a kiss, but even that can leave damage behind. The bigger issue to me is not whether Leo tells the truth. It is whether Javi can actually live with whatever that truth is. Meanwhile, the power struggle at DiMera Enterprises continues, as Xander Kyriakis and Kate Roberts-Brady do what they usually do best: strategize. Their effort to challenge the company has apparently run into resistance from Maggie Kyriakis, and now it feels like the next move could become much more personal. I think what makes this storyline compelling is that business in Salem never stays business for long. It almost always turns into a battle over family, control, and old wounds that never fully healed. And then there is the growing conflict between Johnny DiMera and Chanel DiMera. Chanel's concern over Johnny remaining CEO is starting to create visible strain between them. To me, this feels like more than a simple disagreement about career choices. It feels like Chanel may be seeing something in Johnny that he either cannot or refuses to see in himself. Sometimes the people closest to us recognize the danger before we do, and that may be exactly where this story is heading. Overall, Thursday's episode looks like one of those Salem days, where almost every conversation hides a deeper motive, and every alliance feels like it could collapse without warning. I may be wrong, but this feels less like a day of small drama and more like the beginning of consequences that could ripple through several storylines at once. I think the biggest Days of Our Lives shock for the week of April 20th through the 24th is going to be the fallout from Joy Wesley's baby bombshell, because it sounds like that revelation is going to ripple through Salem in a way nobody sees coming, especially Marlena Evans, who apparently is left completely stunned by what she hears. To me, when a spoiler says Marlena is blindsided, That usually means the truth is even messier than it first appears. Before getting there, the back half of this week is already laying the groundwork for chaos. On Wednesday, April 15th, Gwen Rijek is set to confront her estranged husband, Dmitry von Leuschner-Demera, and I was wondering if this is where that divorce agreement starts falling apart. Dmitry had previously acted like he was willing to let Gwen walk away cleanly, but after being rejected by Leo Stark, his entire mood has shifted. He seems furious at everyone right now, and when Dmitry feels cornered, he tends to become unpredictable. That makes this confrontation feel far more dangerous than a routine marital dispute. Meanwhile, Brady Pub's trivia night turns into another emotional battlefield. Jada Hunter and Theo Carver are competing against Gabby Hernandez and Philip Kiriakis, and I think the real tension has very little to do with trivia. Theo still seems emotionally tangled up in Gabby, even though he has been trying to step back from his position at Demera. At the same time, he is carrying information that could destroy Gabby and Philip's relationship, so every scene with those four feels like a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. Elsewhere in Horton Town Square, Leo unexpectedly runs into Chanel Dupree Demera and Johnny Demera with baby Trey. That encounter could become more important than it looks at first, because Johnny is also caught off guard by something Chanel says. I think Chanel may be starting to question Theo's sudden retreat from power at Demera. Since Theo genuinely seemed to enjoy being CEO, his sudden change in behavior may finally be raising red flags. Then on Thursday, April 16th, things take an even darker turn when Kristen Demera meets with Sophia Choi to discuss a revenge scheme against E.J. Demera. Kristen appears determined to use Sophia as part of her plan, and honestly, that pairing feels dangerous because Kristen rarely does anything halfway. Sophia claims she needs more resources to make the plan work, and that immediately raises concern because in Salem, resources can mean almost anything, and usually nothing good. There is also growing fallout from the latest scheme involving Xander Kiriakis Cook and Kate Roberts. Maggie Kiriakis is furious, while Bonnie Kiriakis feels humiliated by how everything has unfolded. What I find interesting is whether Justin Kiriakis will condemn their actions personally or quietly understand the legal strategy behind what they have done. Maggie may want to comfort Bonnie, but it looks like events are already moving too fast for anyone to stop now. And all of that may just be the setup for next week, when Joy's baby revelation sends Marlena into total shock and pushes several already fragile storylines over the edge. To me, the writers seem to be building toward one of those weeks where one secret doesn't just come out, it detonates.